Earth, humanity's blue jewel and the sole reason for our continued existence. Just consider for a moment. If our planet were a little closer to the Sun, it would look like Venus or even Mercury. A little farther and it would be as cold as Mars, but somehow Earth managed to park itself in just the right spot. Although remarkably resilient, this planet and its biome is not invincible. Our actions over the centuries have progressively damaged our ecosystem and even made it unlivable for certain species whom have already gone extinct. We now see hurricanes, dust storms, heat waves and other natural disasters regularly and more severely, which have caused significant loss of life across the globe. These are real problems and we risk the chance of further escalation if we do not try to stem the impact of our actions on this planet. Now before we continue, I'd like you all to know I make new videos every week on Sundays, so please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting content. Today we'll be discussing 8 things we could feasibly do to save our planet. These solutions can be roughly divided into 2 groups, which include greenhouse gas removal and solar radiation management. Number 1. Reforestation. Today, deforestation is such a large component of global warming, contributing as much greenhouse gases released to the atmosphere as the entire transportation sector. This is why we must replant trees and regrow forests which have been previously cleared and used for various purposes such as minefields and industrial zones. Although this method is arguably the slowest, it offers no drawbacks or side effects since trees are the primary means by which our planet converts excess CO2. To increase the viability of this method, we could plant trees which have been genetically engineered to grow faster and convert more CO2 and perhaps other greenhouse gases. Number 2. Biomass pyrolysis. Our previous method suggested a means of collecting greenhouse gases from our atmosphere, but mitigating the creation or otherwise storing these gases could be just as effective. This brings us to biomass pyrolysis, which involves the burning of crops and other woody materials in a low oxygen chamber in order to generate liquids and gases which are far greener when compared to fossil fuels. This process also produces a substance known as biocharcoal. Not only can this substance make the soil more fertile, it is also capable of storing carbon for hundreds of years, carbon which would have otherwise been released into the atmosphere. This method of carbon sequestration is not to be taken lightly, as some research estimates show that biocharcoal has the potential to store away over 1 billion tons of CO2 globally every year. Number 3. Refreezing the Arctic. At this point, it's widely known that the Arctic ice is melting at a rapid rate, but most people don't realize that the de-icing affects almost every part of the globe. For example, the snow and ice in the North Pole reflects a significant portion of the sun's rays back into space, but with the ice melting, this solar energy will remain here with us and directly accelerate the overall rate of global warming. Some fishes like salmon and trouts will likely disappear, affecting the export economies of countries like Norway and Russia. When glaciers, snow and sea ice melt in the Arctic, they directly contribute to the rise of global sea levels. Did you know that 13 out of the 15 largest cities in the world lie in coastal plains and are quite vulnerable to rising sea levels? Now that we have established why the Arctic is such an important geographical location, we can discuss possible means of undoing the damage partially caused by industrialization. The first way we could refreeze the Arctic is a method theorized by a group of scientists at the Arizona State University. It would involve the installation of over 10 million wind-powered pumps, which would spray seawater onto the surface of existing glaciers, making them thicker, thereby increasing their longevity. Another way would be to spray salt water into the atmosphere in order to whiten the Arctic clouds and reflect the sun's energy back into space, allowing glaciers and sea ice to refreeze on their own. Finally, a team of Indonesian designers recently proposed plans to build giant ice makers in the ocean. These submarines would use the surrounding seawater to make large sheets of ice, which would gradually heal the entire Arctic, or at least a large portion of it. Number 4. Urban greening. It is thought that over 54% of the global population lives in cities, and that number is likely to reach 66% by 2050. Given the enormous carbon footprint a single person has in developed countries like the US and the UK, it is imperative that we curtail a significant portion of these carbon emissions before they can do irreparable harm to our planet. This brings us to the concept of urban greening. Now, urban greening entails the planting of trees and other foliage in and around the cities we live in. The benefits of urban greening are numerous, but most important are its direct effects on global warming. Trees planted in cities absorb excess CO2 in the atmosphere, making the air better for breathing. Trees also capture airborne particles such as dirt, dust, and soot. A mature tree can absorb 120 to 240 pounds of particulate pollution each year. Finally, these trees form a natural canopy within cities, allowing buildings to remain cool, reducing the need for air conditioning, which usually draws power from coal and fossil fuel plants. Number 5. Turn away from fossil fuels. Besides nuclear power and hydroelectricity, fossil fuels have been the main source of energy for nations across the globe. Although these fuels have several benefits even today, the time has come when we need to actively move away from them and focus on renewable means of creating energy. Currently, renewable energy methods like solar, wave, and wind are capable of meeting the energy demands of most countries and are already being used across Europe. Although the aforementioned sources of energy are still somewhat intermittent, we could supplement them with mechanical or even chemical batteries. This could act as temporary energy banks, which would store excess energy during off-peak hours and release it when required. Number 6. Artificial carbon sequestration. In carbon sequestration, the main goal is usually to prevent CO2 emissions from power plants and industrial facilities from ever entering the atmosphere by separating and capturing these emissions on a long-term basis. This process occurs naturally when CO2 is removed by vegetation and stored in the soil, but we will discuss ways this same process can be recreated by man. One proposed method is ocean sequestration, whereby carbon dioxide is injected deep into the ocean, forming lakes of CO2. In theory, the carbon dioxide will stay down due to pressure and temperature of the surrounding water, gradually dissolving into the water over time. Another method is geological sequestration, where the carbon dioxide is pumped into underground chambers such as old oil reservoirs, aquifers, and coal seams which could not be mined. Mineral sequestration is also being considered, and it involves the injection of CO2 into areas rich in magnesium or calcium. The CO2 will react with these elements and combine to form calcium carbonate, otherwise known as limestone, and magnesium carbonate. The carbon which we hope to store by one or all of these methods will be captured from the air by direct air capture plants like the one currently active in Switzerland. Number 7. Solar shields. With solar shields, we'll consider a means of actively cooling our planet from space. Back in 1989, an American engineer known as James Early suggested putting a giant sunshade in space to offset the effects of greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere. More recent proposals have suggested a swarm of thin metallic reflecting disks, a Saturn-like ring of dust particles injected into space from Earth, or a superfine mesh of aluminium threads. Once in place, the solar shield will reduce the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere very quickly and could be scaled up to combat any further rise in global temperatures. Although this method seems straightforward, it will likely cost billions and decades of construction for us to build a solar shield which would have the desired impact, and even if we manage to pull it off, the potential side effects on regional climates and hydrological cycles would be significant. Number 8. Care. Yep, that's right. The final thing we as a species could do to help draw our planet from the brink of climate disaster is to care more. Drive less, recycle when you can, convert to a renewable means of power generation if you have enough disposable income. The point is, live a life which is mindful of planet Earth and its current situation. Because if we don't start to pay attention, we might lose the one place we can call home right now, and trust me, we have searched and there's nowhere else quite like it. Thank you.